Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We're really happy to be celebrating International Women's Day with the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce. And we have some special guests where we're going to be talking about lots of things when it comes to women and business and what keeps us going, and some things about the ecosystem even. So I first want to introduce myself. My name is Doreen Ashton-Wagner, and I'm here in my capacity as founder of a networking group that operates in the area called the Business Sisters, Les Concerts en Affaires. And I am just delighted to be here and have with me Shannon Lebrun, the president of the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce, who is also sales manager with Chorus Entertainment. Welcome, Shannon. It's great to have you here.
Yes. Thank you.
And we have also Angela Youngs, who is founder of Ground Soap and chief soap maker, as I understand as well. Angela, you're the key recipe person, I think.
Yes, some days I am.
And as an entrepreneur, you know, you do lots of other things too. We'll keep it to that, of course.
Absolutely.
Welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mm-hmm. And we have Chantal Tranchemontagne. Chantal is the Chief Creative Officer and owner of Big Catch Communications. She is also the founder and editor-in-chief for Perch Magazine. And it's great to have you here, Chantal.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, of course, we are going to say hello to Shannon Tierney, who is the executive assistant and my sidekick in this Zoom tonight and helping us keep on track and obviously helping with any, I don't know, we won't have any challenges with Zoom, right? Shannon, you promised me that, right?
I promise. It's all going to go great.
Exactly. All right. So to get things started a little bit, and the conversation that Shannon and I had, Shannon Tierney, that is, with regards to the ecosystem and a little bit I guess the reason we wanted to touch on that tonight is because there is more and more research and interesting work that's being done by an organization in Toronto called the Women Entrepreneur Knowledge Hub, of which I've had the opportunity to belong and partake in a few things. And I'm also conducting my own research in our ecosystem of rural Eastern Ontario here. And we're talking about women starting businesses, growing their business, and sustaining them. We also know that in this ecosystem, often there's a lot of stuff going on. So I guess to get us started about this conversation, I'd love to start with Shannon as the president of the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce. You see the ecosystem within the chamber, and I'd love to have your views on what does that mean to you? What to you is the ecosystem when it comes to business in our area?
Wow. I think simply it's a network. It's a network that we can reach out to for mentorship, for leadership, for experience, opinions, because we're all trying to figure out how to get through this thing called life, whether that be a business owner or a sales manager. My husband is a business owner, so I see firsthand how that goes as well. So for me, the ecosystem is really just having the opportunity to work with so many different people that have so many different experiences. In the last year with the Chamber of Commerce, I've always known about Chantal, and I always knew kind of what she did, but not until she started working with us so closely at the Chamber did I really see all of the experience that she had and everything she had to offer. And I think that when you're a Chamber of Commerce, having all of those types of business women or women like me who work in business, it's a network that we can reach out to.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear your views on that. Well, Chantal, you were just mentioned right here. Tell me about your ecosystem and how do you see that as a concept when it comes to your business?
So I agree with Shannon. It's definitely that network that we pull from when we need help, or even sometimes we just need to bounce ideas off of people. And I think as women, sometimes that extends into a larger, it's not just professional, sometimes it's getting advice on how to balance the personal and the professional, because I think most of us here, we have kids and we have a business and we have a pandemic to deal with and maybe aging parents and all these things. So it does tip into the personal as well. And I think the ecosystem gives us a wide range of people from whom we can seek advice from, basically, whether it's personal or professional. And I think too, having that ecosystem to draw from means that it lessens the burden on us in terms of everything that we need to take on, because definitely from my perspective as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's very overwhelming to think about things like finances or, you know, even certain marketing projects that I want to do. I don't have those skills, and my ecosystem allows me to relieve myself of that burden because other people can take care of it for me and with me. That's how I see it.
That is a really interesting view as well, because I often hear women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general feel isolated because they're just go, 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 right? They're not often reaching out and so on. So we'll touch on that maybe a little bit. Angela, I'd love to hear your views. What about your ecosystem and what you do? And you almost have one growing right behind you. I love those plants.
I do have a lot of greenery happening, don't I? You know, my ecosystem is a little bit different because we deal with people outside of our city as well, and so it's been I've really had to rely on a lot of people outside of the city to help me with, you know, exporting and things like that. And so, oh gosh, I'm gonna go off topic already.
No, don't. It's okay. We want to hear that because your ecosystem is your ecosystem. Doesn't matter where. It doesn't have to be just local. I think it's
you're
a
right,
wonderful story to tell us more. Come on.
I think you know, when you're starting your business, it's very intimidating because you have a dream, you have a vision in your head, and you want to be there immediately, but you have to take, you know, thousands of steps back, and you're basically driving your car blindly. And so your ecosystem develops as you're growing your business, as you're becoming brave enough to, you know, reach out and ask someone a question that you don't want to ask anybody. You know, you think I should know it all already. You know, for so many of us, we want people to know that we know it all already, and you know, we have to keep it all together, but we don't have those answers. And so our network, our ecosystem grows as we grow. You know, all those little roots are adhering to things, and that's how we grow. And I think when we trust people and we can rely on those answers and move forward, you know, that's another day where I've learned something more, and we just have to be open to that. I hope I didn't stray too far off topic.
You didn't. You know what I'm hearing also, it's interesting because we seem to have this view in business that we've got to be perfect, right? In this Instagram world, everything's got to be perfect. We have to have the facade. They won't like me if I've made a mistake, etc. Whereas if we think about an ecosystem, gardening is a pretty messy job. We get dirt under our fingernails, right? So I think we could probably cut ourselves a little bit of slack by thinking about it differently. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's great, all of you. So it makes me think, actually, let's dive into things a little bit, and I'd love to hear more about how you each got started. Shannon, we're going to start with Chantal and Angela, and we'll bring you in because obviously, you know, you got started with your career as well. But I'm interested in digging in a little bit with how you got started. We'll go back to Chantal, and you know, if you have any thoughts as you look back to what in your ecosystem may have helped you get started in your business, I'd love to hear that.
So for me, my business as Big Catch got started in 2016 after having moved back to Cornwall. But prior to that, I'd worked 20 years, mostly as a remote worker from wherever I happened to be. And I lived mostly on my own for that 20 years. And I was very used to, you know, having clients from kind of all over the world, mostly across the country. And when I moved back here with my husband, and I had a daughter in tow at that point, I was really craving community. And for me, what that meant was launching a business and working with people face to face. I really, really craved that. And so that's why I did it. I thought that having a company would add some legitimacy, and my mother could finally say to people, this is actually what my daughter does, instead of saying, I don't really know what she does. And it very much turned into that for me, in terms of, I did feel a little bit more legitimate, even though my work before had been, but now I had local clients. I got to meet with them face to face. I could also rely on them when I needed things. And that was a real, as they say, TSN turning point for me.
Interesting. And we've chatted about that, Chantal and I, of course. So, and I can absolutely relate. I think now it's interesting that for a lot of people, this whole remote work and so on is perfectly legitimate. I remember working from home the first time in 1993. This was pre-internet. That's how old I am. And everybody thought, you're just at home with your pink fuzzy slippers watching Oprah, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Angela, over to you. How did you get started with Ground Soap?
Well, I love essential oils, and I was bartending. I'd been bartending, working in the service industry here in town and outside of town for 17 years. And I was approaching my mid-30s, and I thought, I cannot do this for another 5 years. I just can't do it. You know, I was burning out as a bartender. And my husband said, well, you know, what else do you want to do? What? And I said, I want to make products. I would love to do something with essential oil. And he said, well, why don't you make some soap? So we made soap. We made old school soap with lard, and it was horrible. And I shoved it away in a cupboard. I think I had like 50 bars of it, and it sat there for months and months and months. And, you know, going through the motions of still working in the service industry, not very content anymore with how things were going. And I thought, you know what? I've never really started a project on my own and completed it. I've never really done that. And so I think it's time that I do that, and I rock it. And so I had to just prove it to myself. And so I got out some recipes. I looked out some stuff online, and I started fiddling around with it. And I made some samples. I passed them out to people that I worked with at Schnitzel's, and gosh, a month later, I was getting messages saying, Angela, can you please, I'm heading to my shift. Can you just put one of those, whatever color it was, in the mailbox for me? That's the only thing that I can use on my face. So things like that started to happen. And I was like, oh, my ego was being stroked a little bit. And I thought, wow, so I am doing a good job at this. And I continued to work on the recipes, and I worked on them for 2 years. I did the C program at St. Lawrence College, and that's kind of how it started from there. It just snowballed.
Excellent. I'd love to hear that, and those, quirky little stories that we think, oh yeah, it's no big deal, but it becomes a big deal in the end, and we want to hear more in just a moment.
For sure.
Shannon, I'll turn it over to you. I'd love to hear, obviously, not only in your role as president of the Chamber of Commerce and getting started, how did you arrive at that, but also in your career when it came to switching over to radio and so on. How did you get started?
By accident. The saying goes, everybody's in sales. No matter what you do, we're all selling something, a service, a product, whatever it may be. And I actually wanted nothing to do with sales. I have a diploma from St. Lawrence College in business management. And I remember sitting in my selling class, and Mr. Pilon said, so who here is going to have a career in sales? And it's like, there's no way I'm ever working in sales. It's because we always heard about, the car salesman and the guy that sells the dryer and stuff like that. And so I graduated from college and I started waitressing, because what else do you do when you have a diploma and you don't know what you want to be when you grow up yet? So I fell into radio sales by accident. I was 25 years old. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I absolutely love what I do. I became the sales manager 6 years ago at Chorus Cornwall. Shannon Tierney actually worked with us at Chorus for many years. She was our sales assistant and is a phenomenal executive assistant. So I'm so pleased to have her join us at the Chamber of Commerce. It's radio is a crazy world, and it is a very interesting and exciting and creative. No day is the same. I remember, you can ask Shannon, she'll remember that as well. It's challenging, it's exciting, it's frustrating, but our end goal is always to help our clients. And that's the excitement about it. It's to find a client that needs help selling their product or their service, and coming up with an amazing solution for them, and working with really great people. So yeah, radio was completely by accident, but I absolutely love it, and I wouldn't change anything for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all of your stories, really. And so obviously there's this little thing called a pandemic going on, and it's challenged many of us to keep going and innovate and change things up. And I want to dig into the whole aspect. I mean, we could call it motivation, but let's face it, sometimes it's what keeps us going, period, right? And what keeps us changing, because an ecosystem changes all the time. It's a living, breathing thing. And I think in business, sometimes we tend to think in static ways. It's a business model, and it's not supposed to change. Well, thank you for the pandemic to make us change our perspective a little bit. So I'm going to just open the floor and say, what keeps you going? What keeps you innovating? Anybody want to take that on? Go ahead, Angela.
Okay. I think for myself and Ground Soap, I think it's just the excitement of not really knowing what's going to happen. You have your goals, and you have your plan, and some days, most days aren't the same, and that's the excitement. That's I think when you start your own business, when you're taking chances like that, you get off on that. That excites you. That is what propels you. It's the unknown, and it's an adventure. And I think that's what keeps people like us on our toes, and ready to take on that challenge. I know that when I'm not really, really busy and I don't have a lot of stuff on the go, I feel really lost. I feel I need that busyness to keep me, chugging along. And so I like those things. Those things keep us on our toes. They keep us, like a pandemic keeps us fighting and pushing hard and using the resources that we need, and reaching out to people and using our our ecosystem. And it makes the other people in that ecosystem stronger as well, I think.
I want to come back to that. Absolutely. It's when we can showcase a little bit what we're doing and the ways we're changing, we can help others do that and model that too, for sure. Chantal, what about you? What keeps you going and innovating and doing all these new things?
Well, definitely everything Angela said, but also for me, I've thought a lot about this lately, is failure. Also, #fail really keeps me trying new things. I'm not necessarily afraid of failure. I've done it a lot in my life, and there are, in business, I've learned some really hard lessons. I've ruined some great friendships just because I failed at something. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I made a wrong decision, and I hurt people along the way, and that I regret for sure. The other failures I look at, if I haven't hurt anyone, then the failure turns into a lesson. You know what I mean? And that's motivation. It's like, that didn't quite hit the mark, so now I have to try something even bolder or better or new, completely new. So
that's huge.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say that, and we were talking about it on another occasion, of course. There's actually an entrepreneurship theory, because I'm studying entrepreneurship, right? And I'm right in the thick of writing a thesis about it. And there is a theory of entrepreneurship which is called bricolage, which in French means literally tinkering. So when you're tinkering in business, this theory says, that's entrepreneurship. You're forever tinkering and changing things and going ahead. Innovation doesn't have to be a great big leap. You're just, did I say leap? Leap. You're tinkering with something and you're making it better, trying to fix it, adapting it to the market, and so on. So interesting perspective here.
I think
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think part of that tinkering, like, I think that a lot of times people assume, you set your business and that's what you're going to be for the next 40 years. And for me anyway, my business has changed a million ways since I started not that long ago. And it makes me a better business person. It makes me better able to respond to other people, and it refines what other people think about me as well, and my business. So I think that tinkering is definitely something that makes you a better business person. And if you didn't do that, you're kind of stagnating. You've kind of given up, or you've found the perfect recipe, which I haven't seen any businesses do yet. I mean, some do. Some people are just really good at what they do. But I think that's rare.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the tinkering goes on the corporate side as well. I mean, Shannon LeBron, you were asking or telling us about, working every day is different. And, is there any more that you want to add when it comes to that aspect of innovation in your business?
Yeah. Well, I think, I work in radio and advertising, and this whole industry has changed so much since the internet has been, after 1993. But it's constantly evolving. The industry that I'm in, the company that I work for, I'm very fortunate that I work for a company that has a lot of different businesses that they're in. They have a big portfolio. But for Cornwall specifically, it's radio and digital for us. So we don't have access to some of the same things that other markets do, like TV with global news and things like that. So Chorus as a company is always evolving. Our clients are always evolving. You know, Chantal was saying her business has changed over the years. Well, we have to be aware of that as well, because if Chantal's business is changing, that means that her needs are changing. And so I need to be aware of that, so that when I go and talk to Chantal, that I am aware of what her business is going through, because otherwise I might be talking to her about something that is not relevant anymore. So you really do have to stay relevant. You have to constantly be learning. Data is so important right now, and access to the immediate results. And so there's constant training of new ways to do things. And again, I'm fortunate that I have a company that offers all of that training to us constantly. You know, next week we have another event that we're participating in, because the company has just spent another 8 weeks researching people's buying habits throughout COVID-19. Well, that's important for us to know, because when I'm talking to a retail location, and, you know, when we're talking about, are people purchasing right now? What are they purchasing? Where are they spending their money? So it's always changing. And that's why I say every day is different. But for me personally, what keeps me going is my own belief in myself, that I can succeed, that I can do better. I want to be better. I want to win. I want Cornwall to succeed. I want my team to succeed. I want Chorus to see that the team that we have in Cornwall is doing fantastic. And so for me, that kind of gets me out of bed every day, because I like to win. I like to win. We have goals, and I like to reach those, and I like to push. And that's how I ended up at the Chamber of Commerce a couple of years ago, you know. So I think it's constantly pushing myself to succeed and to do better. And Chantal, my mom and dad kind of still wonder what I do for a living. And my kids are like, yeah, my mama, she works at Fresh Radio. Don't you know Fresh Radio? So for me, it's about personal success. It really is. And that's what drives me. I want to feel good about what I've accomplished, and that might be a little selfish, but it really is. I've got, you know, I had a picture in my head about what my life was going to be like. And so for me, it changes because, you know, there's a pandemic, and that kind of threw us off the path we were on. But definitely there's a picture that I've seen since I was a young girl about where my career was going to go. And although I never wanted to be a business owner, I always knew that I wanted to work in business. And I love it. And I love hearing the stories that Chantal tells, and Angela, and many of our other business owners. And the pandemic's been really hard. And we hear firsthand from our clients about how hard the pandemic's been on them. So, yeah.
So I thank you. You've almost set me up for the next segue. This is really good. I'm interested to know, because I mean, I do work with currently with the CFTC as well as COVID-19 Business Relief Advisor, and I am hearing the challenges and so on. What's interesting is I'm also getting calls for people who are expanding. They are doing different things, and they want to know, and some of them are almost going, I'm not asking about COVID-19. Is it okay if we have a chat? And of course it's okay. So I'd love to hear from Angela and Chantal, for instance. What are you noticing both with your clients and as well? I mean, Angela, you work internationally. What are you noticing with regards to what's going on out there?
Well, for Ground Soap and some of the people that we deal with, the not so great things about the pandemic are that supply the supply chains are breaking down. So, for example, where we get our honey for our soap and the wax for lip balms that we do contract manufacturing as well, and lip balms is on that. And so she can't get jars because there are so many people making doing preserves and starting their own business and using glass, and so she cannot find a supplier that can give her thousands and thousands of jars. And so it's very frustrating for them. And so I'm in our ecosystem, I'm hearing about all of these production come to a halt, or issues that they're dealing with because of the supply chain. That hasn't really affected us too much. We did have to switch a few of our suppliers from the US to Canada because we were doing our own exporting and importing. We were doing our own brokerage. And so because we are not licensed brokers, we couldn't do that anymore. So we had to switch over to licensed brokers. And instead of it costing me, let's say a total of $40 US over the bridge and back with a big Sprinter van that we have, the Sprinter van's not being used anymore. And now we have to pay couple of $100s every time something comes over the bridge. And so that has been a little bit of we've had to figure out things logistically that way. But as far as everything else, it's been okay. We've managed to pivot without it being too painful. And our biggest need right now is actually funds to employ people. And so that we really need to hire some folks, and that's a really painful part for us right now, because we're at that level of growth where it just can't be one or two people in the shop, and we need like 5 people in the shop. And so, but we just can't, we're just at that, it's a tight situation. It's a good problem to have, but it's almost as scary as starting all over again, as taking that leap, because you're letting people in, and you're also, that now they're relying on you. And so it's a really scary time for us. Exciting because now we're there, all of our systems are in place and we're ready to rock, but we just have to get over this next hump. So it's challenging, exciting, all of those things.
Thanks for sharing that. It's interesting. I a former boss at an ad agency in Toronto many years ago said to me, I don't have just one mortgage. I have 19 mortgages or rents to pay.
Absolutely.
And that's the burden of having employees, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So I totally relate. Yeah.
Yes, I just went into a full body sweat talking about it.
Doreen, I just wanted to comment about the hiring. It is something that we hear a lot about within Cornwall and area is hiring. We don't have enough employable people to fill the positions that are available in Cornwall. Many of our distribution centers do have to leave the community because they're trying to find employees. And I have to tell you that even when my boss says to me, Shannon, what are some of your biggest challenges in Cornwall? And I say hiring. Hiring is a very big challenge. Cornwall's not the only area that's having this challenge. But we've seen it really increase during the pandemic because people were just afraid to work. And so they could stay home and still pay their rent and feed their families, or they could risk going to work and finding somewhere to put their kids. So the pandemic is definitely what I've seen is put a lot of businesses in a situation where hiring is really hard. And even my husband's company he's been, looking for salespeople, he's been looking for drivers, and the pot is not big. And so it makes it very difficult for our business owners to grow their business and to train and to have employees that stay long term. And that's something that, the chamber has seen, that I know I've seen in my work. I know that Shannon remembers working with me and seeing some of the difficulties we have in hiring. So it's not just specific to the pandemic, but it has really blown up because of the pandemic. And so that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. And, you think about the EOTB and what they do and what they're trying to bring to the community. So when you talk about ecosystems, there's one that we're naming that is important for our business owners like Angela, who is looking, for somebody. I think it's really important to be able to network and communicate that she is in need of employees, and how can we help her with that? And that's where the ecosystem comes into play, right? So I didn't know Angela was looking for somebody. Now I do. And so if I hear of, people that are looking, that's kind of how that works. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have a bit of a dream that way when it comes to, and I think, Chantal, you're a perfect example of, our kids. My child has moved away. She's in Toronto. I'd love for her, for selfish reasons, to get a little bit closer one day once she feels she's had more of that experience. But maybe we need to repatriate some of our kids, some of our, just like Chantal, you came home, right?
Yeah.
You came back to the ecosystem. So yeah. Chantal, do you have any more thoughts? What have you observed when it comes to the changes that are happening right now, and some of the stories? We've talked about a few challenges. Do you have any other observations that you'd like to add?
I think the pandemic has, everyone has said this, but it's forced people to obviously pivot and to find new ways, especially for a lot of the retailers, well, actually for all businesses. Moving to e-commerce is definitely a huge pivot for a lot of business owners. And because I work in marketing, I've benefited in a horrible way or in a good way. I don't know how to put that, but from people, who were very resistant to any kind of change in their business, the pandemic forced them to try something different. And in many cases, it's worked out very well for them. Some still have the growing pains of trying to figure out, but moving to online, I think, has really been a major one. Also, I've seen a lot more collaboration among business owners. So from the makers or the food producers kind of banding together, or even the farmers. That's been a huge, and that's really benefited, I think, the consumer, because suddenly they're getting these wonderful packages from, collaborations from, say, Micocina with Reuben, with Blooms, and they put together something, and it's a one-stop shop. The city also jumped on that bandwagon with their, I think they were called jingle boxes at Christmas time. So all those kinds of collaborations really benefit the whole community. And actually, that's maybe the third thing that I've noticed, is that we've begun to really appreciate what we have in Cornwall, Akwesasne, SD&G far more than before, because we were forced to look at, I don't just have to buy from Amazon now. I want to support my community. Oh my God, I didn't know that business sold that, or that I could get this here. And that's been really awesome, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chantal. The collaboration that has taken place in our community has been amazing. And pivoting in e-commerce has been huge. We've seen, we saw a lot of businesses struggle because they didn't have e-commerce. And so they had to figure out how to sell their products while they were closed to bring revenue in. So absolutely, there's been huge change. pivot is a word we hear all the time. And I would say for the Chamber of Commerce, the pandemic has been really great for the Chamber of Commerce. And I say that because we were very event driven before, right? It was about networking. It was about home shows. It was, and that's how we made money. And all of a sudden, we don't have a single event that we can hold, and we have no revenue coming in. And then you're like, well, so let's back up here. And what is the Chamber of Commerce supposed to be doing? What is our goal? Like, why are we here? And so for us, the pandemic, like, even, we brought a brand new executive director in, and we had this big plan of all the things he was going to do. He started in January, and then in March, he gets hit with a pandemic. And so now it's like the Chamber needs to pivot. And how? Like, what do we do? And so yeah, for the Chamber, it's been great. It's been a great experience, and we've been really able to shift our focus and really focus on our businesses and helping our business owners and collaborating with the training board, with CFDC, with Chantal, like the things that we've been able to accomplish. And so the pandemic has been good for certain businesses, and then a struggle for others. But I think pivot is really the big word. We joke about how often we use it, but everybody's had to figure out how to do their business differently.
Absolutely. And I hear the term collaboration a lot, and I've certainly seen it very much in the research I've been doing. The theme of collaboration seems to also resonate very much with women. It seems to be the way that we naturally do a lot of things. We're community builders and so on. So now I'd like to turn a little bit to the way that we can go forward and sustain, both sustain ourselves, our businesses, and our communities going forward. So do you have any thoughts about that? I'm going to call it the balancing act. And sometimes I don't like to use that. It's a little bit like the word pivot. And, sometimes we overuse certain things, but there is that balancing act, right? An ecosystem is always something that's moving. You always have to be doing something in the garden. So how do we as women in business, women business owners, maintain that balance? I'd love to hear your views, maybe tips. What's worked for you in that maintenance of balance? Angela, you're looking ready to jump in now.
The perimeter is highlighted and it's chosen me. Oh my gosh, balance. That's a tough one because I'm in my mid to late 40s, so I feel like every day is just it's taking me somewhere that I wasn't expected. But it comes from, I think, balance for me, my family, knowing that I can shut it off when I come home. That doesn't generally happen because my husband is just as much a part of Ground Soap as I am. And so we're always talking, it's always work. And sometimes I feel like, I have a working problem. Like that's all I can think about. It's hard to turn it off, but I think because we own our own business, because we can make those decisions, because we can, say, let's not go to the shop until 11 today. We're having a great morning. Let's just have another cup of coffee and then we'll go. It's knowing when to take the pressure off and knowing when to put the pressure on, and being okay with not having the laundry done. And, we still get up in the morning, and the first thing I think about is, what am I going to make for supper? And then the rest of my day, can go. But I'm thinking about life and work, home and work during the day. And I think it's just, some days I have crazy days and I want to curl up in a little ball and cry, and that's okay. And that's how you let it out. And then the next day is you start back up fresh the next day. And I think if we have family to help support us, and our ecosystem there to ask questions, and our mentors to guide us and let us know that it's going to be okay. I had an incredible mentor. She still is, Noella Cottenham. She owns Sign It. And oh my gosh, on the days when Ground Soap first started 12 years ago, I would drive up to Williamstown and, 2 big coffees, and we would sit there for an hour and a half sometimes, and she would just, steer me in the right direction. I just needed a little bit of guidance, or just to know it was going to be okay. And I swear she pumped me right back up, and I get back in the car towards Cornwall, and I was like, oh gosh, I needed that so bad. But I just needed to know it was going to be okay, that this week was not so great, and my head wasn't in the right place, but you need your peeps in your corner, and if they're not there, then I don't know what people do if they don't have their team around them.
Yeah, it can be very isolating. I used to say, because I was also in business with my husband, and I used to say, I just want to talk to someone about business with whom I am not married.
Exactly.
That's why I hired a coach. Very serious. I hired
For sure.
Betty Healy was my coach for, I paid her so that I could just talk with her and, to be honest, bitch a little bit about my husband, and but I figure it out, right?
We all need to do that.
Just bitch, but I also wanted the business perspective. So anyway, thank you for mentioning Noella. She's been a mentor to several women I know.
Yes.
So it's good to know. Chantal, I'm going to turn it over to you, because that whole balance thing. You work from home, right?
I do.
So it's like, how do you balance that? I work from home and I need some tips. Do you have any for me?
I can honestly say before the pandemic, that was much easier for me, because it was just me at home and I could take off on a run or do whatever I wanted to do. I made sure I had business lunches with friends and colleagues all the time. That's how I sort of kept it together. And then on the weekends, our family made sure we went camping or kayaking or whatever it is we wanted to do. Since the pandemic, it's been a lot harder, just because now I have an online learner. My husband was not furloughed, but he was off during the lockdown and decided to channel all his nervous energy into home renovations. He's a carpenter. Ooh. So yeah, so it was sort of, to my benefit. I got a new office out of it, but it was challenging to sort of be there for my daughter, answer questions from my husband, try and mute everyone during Zoom calls, deal with family that's trying to visit. We're caregivers for our aging parents, so they show up every once in a while too. But I really kind of took a step back and I picked up running again, and I will go for walks with my best friend. And I just really recognize when I need a break. And like Angela said, I have those days probably twice a year. I haven't had one yet during the pandemic, but where I just lay down and will not move for 12 hours straight, knowing that the next day will be better and it'll be fine. I think I'm now far more forgiving of myself for days like that, or far better at recognizing when I need to just recalibrate my life and say, okay, I'm spending too much time on work, not enough time with family, and not enough time with myself. And so how do I change that? Mm-hmm. I think it's really important to do that. And I think as women, because we do juggle so many things, that sometimes it's hard to lose track of the fact that, oh, I haven't had any alone time or fun time.
Even in the washroom.
Yeah. Even in the washroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember when my daughter was, 4. So I went into the washroom. I was headed towards the washroom, and she came running down the hall, and she said, "Mommy, I'm going to close the door to give you some privacy. And I said, oh, thanks, honey. But she came in the bathroom and closed the door. So she was in there with me.
Yes.
It's like never fails. Yeah, never fails.
No, it's true.
I've heard us talk about obviously balancing and the balls we're trying to juggle and so on. So I'm going to pull us back a little bit and kind of go a little bit more macro view. And I'd like to ask you to put on your hats, your advisor hats. And if you had a way to tell our community leaders, maybe our political leaders, that we need to change certain things in the system for women. I want to hear, okay, all right, the hands are up. I want to hear, what is that advice? What do you want our community leaders, political leaders, and decision makers to be changing? Because clearly this is not sustainable for many of us when it comes to this juggling act. What do we need to do? Chantal.
So I've been having a lot of conversations with friends and advisors lately about how there's such an importance put on growth, on financial growth of companies, and how that is the marker for success. And I had somebody tell me that recently, that you know, that I wasn't the kind of person who was interested in growth of my company, and I took that well. I wasn't insulted by it, but after that conversation, I sort of started thinking about that, and I was saying, no, I have actually grown. My company has grown a great deal in the number of people that I help, or in the types of projects that I take on, or in how my ecosystem has expanded in such a way that now if I have a client come to me and have a certain problem, I know exactly who the perfect person to help them. It might not be me, but I act as a connector, and that is growth in my view.
And I really love to hear that, because I do think, having done some of the work with the COVID-19 business relief advisor position, I have noticed, for instance, one of the programs was giving grants, and it wasn't a Cornwall Chamber or a CFDC program. We can, go elsewhere here, but one of the metrics was 2 or more employees. Mm-hmm. And this grant could have helped so many solopreneurs who absolutely needed it. And I'm like, why are we still measuring you're not a real business unless you have employees? Why is that?
Yeah,
maybe we should be relooking at that. What other advice or instructions would you give our community leaders that for meaningful change in the way we do things? Anybody?
Can I go again?
You're still not highlighted on my screen. Of course you can.
I love this conversation. Now I've forgotten what I wanted to say.
It's all good.
Oh, I know what it is. That you need to listen to your own compass. I went through a growth period in my company where I really listened to some outside advisors, and they were successful business people, and I really trusted them, but I didn't listen to how I felt about that growth. And so I grew my company quickly, and it never was what I wanted, but I thought that that is what I should be doing, because these really smart people whose opinions I really valued, or not opinions, their advice I really, really valued, made sense at the time. But it wasn't until I pulled back and I realized, no, that's not where I want to be. And I'm much happier being a solopreneur and tapping into the expertise of other people, rather than, for me anyway, having employees.
So would your advice then, Chantal, be directed at how do we value Solopreneurship, how do we encourage it? Is there something there that we could be doing differently, systems-wise?
Yeah, I think there is value to be put on solopreneurship for sure. I think people who do businesses or who run their businesses alone can have a great impact on the community around them. I think the bigger lesson for me was that don't forget who you are. That even though somebody has an endless amount of more experience than you do in regards to business, what they think you should be doing isn't necessarily the right answer for you. And that you have to kind of pull back every once in a while and take stock of, you know, what your values are or what it is you want to accomplish and how to do that without necessarily growing employees, revenue, all those kinds of things.
I can give a little bit of an example for the listener as to how you know, listening to your gut really does pay off. And I think we were 5 years old. Ground Soap was about 5 years old, and we had quite a juicy offer from an investor, and we really didn't know our company well enough to take on that investment. You know, we could have grown, but we didn't really have our direction in place. We were just starting to become in tune with the business and figure out, you know, do we want to manufacture for retail? Do we want to do contract manufacturing? What do we want? Do we want to be, you know, have different retail locations, Ground Soap retail locations, or are we just going to be manufacturers? And we really did have to pick a lane. And so we weren't really sure of that until we became, you know, we started to become experts in our field. And it's really hard to make those big, huge decisions that will, you know, project your business in one direction or another. And so I think it's huge if you can listen to your gut and, you know, think, I can't do this, I'm not ready, or I am totally ready. But for us, it really, we were days away from, you know, signing some papers. And I was driving home from a sales trip in Toronto. I called my husband and I said, I just don't think we can go through with this. And he said, oh, so relieved you said that. But he was really going to, because it was my baby, he was really going to let me go down that track, you know. And now he definitely wouldn't, because he has way more invested in Ground Soap as well. He would definitely be like, absolutely not, we can't do that. But in the beginning, you know, I was naive, and I definitely would have done that had I not really sat with it for a while and thought, why do I want to say yes to this? Is it just because I want cash flow right away? Because if that's it, then, you know, I'd rather be eating Kraft Dinner without the wieners, you know, than. So anyway, that's that.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important that we come out and say those things at times, because otherwise it's glossed over. You know, the business press doesn't tell you to follow your gut and stay deliberately at a certain level or manage what your definition of growth may be. That's different than what the economists measure, you know.
Yeah.
So
especially now with social media, everything looks so perfect and so beautiful, and it's really hard to keep those blinders on and just keep running your own race, right? Competition is good, it's healthy, it's great to know what's out there, but it doesn't help you really move forward. That's, you know, it's hard work and years and years and years of just hard work and staying focused. And if you can get sidetracked like that, it can happen so easily.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask, I don't know, Shannon, either Shannon's maybe, any more thoughts about what is it we need to change with maybe the way we look at things, or any advice we need to pass on to our community leaders that we need to look at for changes?
I would say we need to stop talking and acting. I think that sometimes we spend too much time talking about things and we don't actually do anything about it. So I would like to see the activity happening about all the stuff that we've talked about. You know, it's kind of like when you tell your kids to pick up their toys and you got to tell them 6 times and they don't pick them up. I feel that way sometimes whenever we're in discussions, business meetings, or we're talking about, you know, something that's happening or not happening. And I feel that sometimes we just don't move forward, and we just keep talking about we should do this or we should make that change, or and we don't. And so I think that if I were, you know, talking to the powers that be, the ones that are making the decisions, I would say, let's make those decisions and let's act on them. Let's stop talking about it.
Are there any particular ones you want to share with us?
No, like I said, like my kids,
we're having a real conversation here.
Yeah. I just think that there's different, you know, projects that are being worked on within our community that are not moving forward the way they should. I hear from some business owners the frustrations that they're having, you know, moving forward with their business because they're stopped at certain situations and they can't get, you know, the signature or what's needed to move forward. And I think that's just in general, you know, people want to see Cornwall and area grow, and we've got great people in this community. I mean, it amazes me that we have so many people doing their thing in this community and growing and really care about it. I moved away for a little while, was living in Calgary, and my family came back when I was 19. So it was like a shock to come from Calgary back to Cornwall, which I'm sure Chantal felt the same way when she came back to the community. And I think about, you know, I could be in this big city, like I could have stayed, and I came back to Cornwall because I wanted to be with my family, and I'm here now, and my husband has a business and we have 3 children here, and I care very much about this community because I want my kids to go and experience, but I want them to come back. They have to have something to come back for. Right. And so that's what we need. I think that's what we need to be focused on as a community, is that continuous growth. And as we talk about it, let's make it happen. Make it happen is one of the core values that Chorus has. And it's not, no, we can't do that. It's always, well, how can we make that happen? And so I think we need to figure out ways to make it happen.
So based on those thoughts, maybe something else we need to be figuring out in talking with our community leaders and so on is really emphasizing, we're all, you know, for those of us who are mothers and so on, it's really, how do we get our community to a point where our kids do want to come back, or more of our kids do want to come back? And I think that may refocus our attention on some different priorities and its quality of life. And I think if anything that the pandemic has shown us is throughout Cornwall area, Akwesasne and so on, in North Glengarry, we've had a real estate boom. Why? Because people see that we have a quality of life and space and so on. So yeah, we've shared a lot of different thoughts, ladies, and I wish we had more time. And I'm watching the clock a little bit, and we don't have forever. I do want to thank you immensely for just the lovely conversation, the thoughts, the personal stories, the advice that you've shared. I think will go a long way. I wish you all a wonderful International Women's Day on March 8th, but we're taping this beforehand, so I know that we'll be able to dispense disperse all of your wonderful wisdom through the community with these videos. So thank you for making the time. On behalf of the Cornwall and Area Chamber of Commerce, Thank you for being here.